GM. So this is actually a really cool episode. We were supposed to have a podcast with a friend of mine, and he didn't show up. And we couldn't get a hold of him. So Almond and I were just chatting. And Almond is the superstar who behind the scenes makes this podcast work. You know, I just show up and hang out. And Almond works with our designer to have all these cool little things on the side round, makes it all beautiful and coordinates and sets up times, does all the Google count, does all the real work. Right. And so it was fun. We were just chatting about life, and she's a good friend because she works at Giveth with me and all these things. So it was really fun. We just kind of connected and chatted, and I thought it was good. We think it's good enough for a podcast. And so this is kind of just a random chat about crypto and how things are moving with really the behind the scenes hero that makes this podcast possible. So I hope you enjoy.
How was the days of talking about crypto like in 2014 or like in Burning Man? Like how's that different from these days?
Oh man, it was so much better. There's so much around the ethos, right? Like people actually cared about the problems it could solve. Making money wasn't even, it was barely on the radar. It was like, holy crap. Like we don't have to start nonprofits to do some of this stuff. Like we could replace governments. We could do really cool things. Like, and it had that cypherpunk vibe still,
Mm-hmm.
you know? It had this like revolution energy. And now it has this opportunity energy, which is fine. Like that's cool, but it's not the same, you know? Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's like the average energy, you know, the revolution energy is still there in crypto. It's just drowned out by, and it's bigger, you know, that revolution energy is growing and growing, but not as fast as the making money energy, you know?
Right. Yeah,
So, yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I think that for sure this like rebel spirit is there. Of course, not as strong as the beginning, but in some way, I think that we should like try to get it alive more, you know?
No, the thing is, it's stronger than it was at the beginning. It's
Mm,
actually stronger. It's just drowned out,
mm,
right?
mm,
It's like it's like at your average crypto meetup in 2014, your average crypto conference of 2014, it was more of a focus.
mm,
But your average crypto conference or meetup was five fucking people. You know, like you didn't have these massive. It's like how were you know in 2013 it was like Coinbase finally came out. You know, before that, you had to wire money to Japan to even get crypto or figure out how to mine it, you
okay.
know? And there was crypto. Crypto was just Bitcoin. No one said crypto. Crypto wasn't a term. Like you just said Bitcoin. Oh, it's Bitcoin. Oh yeah, Namecoin, Litecoin. Yeah, those are Bitcoins. You know, like it's like that's like the framing wasn't even there. It was just like you just talk about Bitcoin. You know, you don't even talk about anything else. So
Wow. Uh,
it was, I mean, Ethereum didn't exist. And even, yeah, it was just, it was, but so like, even though you don't hear about it as much, because if you're like, you search crypto and Google or whatever on Twitter, you hear like all the making money opportunities, you know, buy my NFTs and all this shit. But like, if you actually like, if you're looking at the size of the people who believe that we can use crypto to replace governments with something better or you know enhance the society in some way, like that core has grown so much, you know, like Giveth doing good, like Gitcoin, all these projects, like wh- where were they in 2016? None of these projects existed, you
mm.
know.
I think that this is really interesting that we're here every day, all the time, and then we get biased going to this conference, but still the people that's using this technology is like none, so small.
Yeah, but if this grows, right, and then like right now look at all the, like every year there's some country that has some crazy revolution, you know,
Hmm.
or some huge issue. Right now it's like Ukraine, Iran. I don't know which South American countries are exploding right now. I don't know, you know. One of them is, I'm sure, Venezuela. uh you know, they've been exploding for a while, but the adoption isn't there.
Hmm.
They can't use crypto to replace any kind of government services or satisfy any actual needs because the adoption isn't there. If the adoption is growing because people want to buy NFTs to make money, who cares? That's great. And then when there is like a catastrophe in a country, hyperinflation or something like that, if there is enough mass adoption, that tech can actually be applied to help normal people. So, oh no, it's so horrible. Everyone's just trying to make money. It's like, yes, who gives a fuck? Let's get people with private keys. Get private keys in hands of people. More people with MetaMask, the better. It doesn't matter what the purpose is, because then now this is like strategic infrastructure that can be applied when we need it.
Mm-hmm. It was crazy that Argentina was actually one of the first countries that to start adopting like really crazy Bitcoin because of something that happened with the government and like institutions failing and the government failing. So yeah, I guess you're right. It's just about like putting people like to the edge for them to start using this technology. It was kind of like the same way that the internet, right? Like at the beginning, the user experience, it was really bad. Like it was really awful to use the internet. And then just like I think that came, I don't know what happened, like some better UX, but at the beginning it was really awful, horrible. I think that we're kind of like in the same stage right now that the UX is just like really bad, you know?
Yeah. And people are just getting better and better and building more shared infrastructure that can work together, like, standardizing the infrastructure layer so that everyone can participate, and like TCP and a lot of the infrastructure layer has gotten so solid that they're just not going to change it. And then it's way easier to build on and build patterns. And oh my God, it's like every programming language is some kind of like, simpler version of a more complex language, or like, it's ones and zeros turned into C that then is turned into something else. That's like, and now you can just like no code, you can build a whole website, right?
Mm.
Like you can go to Squarespace or whatever and make a pretty nice website. I mean, what are we doing right now? This is
Yeah,
crazy.
it's
This is, like,
crazy.
this is back to the future shit. And I feel like, I wonder if it's, you were comparing it to the early internet again. And I wonder if it is the same thing. It's like, oh, you have an internet job. It's like, like,
Yeah.
yeah. So what? I think eventually it'll be like, yeah, I work with crypto. Like, I don't get it. There's like some kind of like, oh, I'm not supposed to get that. There's like some expectation of like, oh, I need to do a bunch of research to understand what you're talking about. It's like, not really. How about this? Governments suck. Oh yeah, hey, yeah, high five. I agree with that one. Like, could we build something better? Yeah, like,
Yeah.
like, do you work for a nonprofit or do you work in crypto? Do are like, and it's like, well, you do both. But if you say you work in crypto, people are like, oh, I don't get it. You say, yeah, I
Mhm.
help. I help like a fundraising platform. It's like, oh, that's cool. And then you're like, yeah, our fundraising platform uses PayPal, and they're like, what? No, they're not. They're not. It's like, oh, it uses crypto. It should be like, oh, that uses PayPal. It's like, oh, whatever. Who cares? Do you know how PayPal works? Of course not. Like, do you know how crypto works? Of course not. Who cares? What does that matter? It's like just the rails underneath. And of course, we're trying to do crazy things. We have some big dreams, but like, you know, it,
Mhm.
it's like you work for a fundraising platform. Nonprofits get in there, they try to raise money, and it's cool. We actually give rebates to people. Like if you just said everything without crypto, people are like, oh, I totally get it.
And I think that it's like a really cool opportunity there, just like to target that narrative and try to change it. Like, no, crypto is like Burning Man too, and like Burning Man is also like nonprofits, and like
Yeah.
it's really a revolution. This is like really the rebels that never related to uh institutions or schools or governments. When you were a teenager or when you were younger, like what were you doing? Like you used to feel different, or like used to do like different things, like listen to heavy metal. I don't know. Like
Yeah,
just putting word, but you were kind of like rebel when you were like really young.
I wouldn't say a rebel. I would say I was weird and not normal. I was a nerd, you know?
You were a nerd?
Yeah,
Like what kind of nerd? Like school nerd, or like more of like an introvert nerd, or like you were learning by yourself, or what kind
I
of
was
nerd?
extroverted, but I was a school nerd. I was on the math team, you know? Uh,
That's so cool.
I didn't like to do homework so much, so I didn't get great grades, but um yeah, and I was uh yeah, I was weird. I didn't care about what other people thought so much. In high school, a lot of people started calling me Griff, and it kind of like that transition of a name really, I feel like, changed who I was. And I got to be, I got to recreate myself as Griff, and Griff is really cool.
I think that for a lot of us that happened, like we have these, okay, before and after, in which like you change. Uh and yeah, like that's really interesting, that how someone can leave something that really like mark you, and then you have like this transformation.
Yeah, and I've heard it from a few people, especially attached to names, you know? Like
Hmm.
when you change your name, it's like you can release some identity, you know?
Right.
Uh
Yeah. And then what happened? Like you change, and then you did a career, or what happened? Like you just started in crypto, or like do crazy things, or like live in the regular school institution system, or like what happened afterwards?
when
Like
I
you,
changed my name, I
yeah, when
mean,
you change your name, like you quit school, or you keep
no,
studying.
no, I mean that was in high school. I'm fucking old. Uh I'm 38, you know? Like so I was in high school. Then I went to college and I got a chemical engineering degree and I started being a chemical engineer for a few years. But I like, I didn't wear shoes when I'd walk around and in the office, and I'd sit on one of those yoga balls, and everyone was like I don't know about this guy, and then like I don't know. Eventually, I was like, I don't want to work here anymore. Like I don't like I don't like the output. I liked my job. It was fun. I liked the people I worked with. I liked that it was very challenging and like interesting. I was building power plants, but like the output was a power plant. Like that's not. I'm too much of a hippie for that shit. Uh, so when layoffs came around in like 2009, I was like, pick me, please. Like I told my boss, I'm just so you know, I know layoffs are coming, and I don't, I don't really have any bills. I don't have any kids. Like, just saying, you know. Uh, and so I got laid off and did unemployment for a while, which was great. Just like researched, and the state was paying me $600 a week to
Wow.
not work. They're paying me not to work. If I
Yeah.
get a job, I lose it. Like what I think I became a hippie in college when I learned about 9/11. Like I became a conspiracy theorist hippie. I learned about 9/11 and the financial system, and like watched a bunch of conspiracy documentaries basically.
Hmm.
And that's when I became a hippie. I don't think I was always a hippie. I was leaning towards it,
Okay.
but like when I started to believe that the government did 9/11 or had a hand in blowing up buildings, that's when I
Right.
was like, okay, you know,
Wow.
okay. And then you get the choice, right? Like if you're not exposed to it, how can you choose to believe that, right? Like you get the choice. A lot of people get exposed to it and they're like, yeah, no, I more believe in the system that exists today. It's
Yeah.
safer. Yeah, it evolved to be this way for a reason. I'll just vote for my favorite representatives and it'll be okay. you know like okay, these people get to choose that. But if you never even have the other option, right? You
Yeah.
never get that other exposed to the other concept. You'll never get there. You'll never think about it.
Yeah. I've never in my life like actually thought about what was it before and after that for me, just like light the fire and it was
And it
like,
was going to a public school. That's what it
yeah,
was.
like going to public school in which people was actually talking about really extreme, like, I don't know, ideologies and anarchism. What like was the first time in my life that I actually met anarchists, and the public school that I went, it was like related with UNAM. So there was a lot of people doing that, like taking actually the buildings sometimes, like the students just took the buildings and then they do something else. In that school that I went, they were doing t-shirts and they were doing like workshops, and it was like really different from all my life that I was really take care, like in this traditional and religious school. For me, it was like, what is this? Like,
Yeah. And how long did it take for you to become one of them, versus just like someone in the crowd? Or did you ever become one of them? The
yeah, yeah, I have like my mohawk and like,
really?
yeah, it was like my boots, and I
How,
have my band. I play with the
how long how
band.
long did it take? Like you get to the public school and you're like with your books and you're like, oh my God, these guys are weird. And and then and then like what is going on? Oh my God. Uh and then it's like Mohawk, like, yeah, we're taking the building. Like how long did that take? Like a week, a month, or
It was like
yeah.
immediately for me, just to change and start learning about like communism and anarchism and socialism and all these things that I've never heard before, and start hanging out with like really skinheads. You remember those? Like,
I mean, not in my schools, but yeah, on TV.
yeah, like the skinheads and like all these kids were there, but like the real ones. And I was like, okay. And for my family, it was so bad. Like they were so worried for me because,
They're like, why did we let her go to public school? We should have kept her.
yeah, my
Yeah.
dad stopped talking to me the whole time that I was in that school. Really?
Really?
Yeah. My point is that for the people in crypto that I've met, they have like crazy stories like this. Like,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I mean, this is the thing. If you're born into a sheltered life, how do you escape it? It's like it's like you're in a psychological prison, You're in a information prison.
Mm-hmm.
But now, and I feel like this is like probably the best part of the internet is that you have access to other ideas no matter what. You can't actually keep someone sheltered, whether it's porn or anarchism or like conspiracy theories. Like you have access to it all, and if something tickles your fancy, you can start going deeper and going deeper and going deeper. And that wasn't possible in the 80s.
Yeah.
It wasn't possible in the early 90s. It's only been possible for our generation, really. Wait,
How do you think that we can actually, like you were saying, concentrate all this energy into like really improve this technology and not just like have like this crazy ADHD of seeing Twitter and like TikTok, and like how are we actually going to like fight with that for making this technology really something focused and like transform.
I'm not really into fighting battles and pushing upstream. It's more like let's accept it and lean into it. That's how I feel. It's like, okay, well, let's make our Twitter good. Let's follow that. Like, let's build things that if that's how we're evolving, what we're evolving into, instead of judging it as good or bad, just accept it and build towards it. Build, okay, and this is, we have to, let's make, instead of making Medium posts that are these long paragraphs, bullet points. Like, you know,
Right.
I feel I swimming upstream I'm done with that shit. Okay, it's too hard.
Yeah.
Too hard. It's and like everyone's like, but we need to evolve the human consciousness. It's like, how about you just accept the human consciousness as what it is, and let's work with what we got to make lives better. You know, make our worlds better. And I don't trying to change everybody is never going to work. You know, trying to build something that's useful for everybody. You know, trying to build patterns that are somehow revolutionary and like solve real problems. Now we're talking. Now we can make movements. You know, and just be ethical and think about like what the outcomes are of what you're building. Yeah, have just way better user experience. You know, like you can't make, for instance, you can't really make regular payments, right? Like if you want to have a subscription service like Patreon or even just billing every month for a cell phone, you
Mhm.
can't do that with your Ethereum address.
Right.
You can't pull money out, you know. But you could set with once we have account abstraction, a lot of these things will be way easier. You'll be able to do a lot more, that you take away these like restrictions of you having to click a button to make it work. It's more complicated than that. That's like a very simple example, and I can't honestly say that I've followed it so closely that I could describe it to you, but it's something we talked about since like early days of Ethereum, 2015, 2016. Account abstraction was always like something that we were working towards. And
Mm-hmm.
now it's real. Now there's Visa is working on it. Visa was talking about how they have a team that's building on top of account abstraction models, you know, that and it's the standards are becoming pretty solid. They're getting close to the point where maybe not this year, but probably next year for sure, that EIP will upgrade Ethereum to allow that. And I feel like that's going to be such a huge upgrade for allowing user experience flows that we want, where people don't have to store their private keys, because there are no private keys. There are no private keys necessarily. You can have logins, normal. You can use crypto in a normal way. Now, it won't be as safe as if you have a private key, but also won't be as dangerous as if you have a private key. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of like this, like you can share your custody a lot better. Coinbase can be like a bank, you know, Visa can be like your bank. And you can start having that trust relationship that like this is what I'm saying about like we just have to accept reality. We have to accept our user base and what do they actually want, and not be building towards some ideal. What do they actually want? They don't want to store their money, you know. They want to, maybe they want to store their like, you know, their gold in a vault, you know, and that's where you have your private key and it's all like safe and secure and da da da. But like their day-to-day payments is not going to happen with that shit. And that's what will make this stuff usable and allow it to expand to normal people who want normal workflows. And old people will be using crypto and they don't know it, you know.
For some reason, a lot of people in the space and in crypto, we all have always have these conversations about like, how are we going to change everything for them to use like this technology that's going to save the world and blah. But you're right, it's more like just to change something is just to adapt all those things in the same way that you're saying like we cannot ride like 20 minutes reading Medium post anymore. We need to write bullets. We need to do a resume because that's the way people brains work.
So we need to make the default easy. And then when all of a sudden someone's like reached a certain level, we're like, hey, it's time to level up your game, you know. Like you're a pro now. Like graduate, and actually you could be a pro. You could at least I graduate to intermediate, you know. Here, let's do this, you know. Here's their next level. Write down these 12 words. There's $1,000 behind these 12 words. There's $10,000 behind these 12 words. Take it, you're going to take it seriously now. There's the incentives are aligned. If you're like, hey, like come play this blockchain game, we're gonna click these things. You know, you have to do all this stuff and then you can put $10 in. It's like,
Mm.
I'm not doing that. I'll just go play World of Warcraft. Fuck you guys. You know, like
Yeah, like what's the point? Like what that is going to give me, like
Nothing, you know? But account abstraction, more like the classic traditional experience that has evolved because this is what people want, you know? Then it's like, oh, okay, you know? And then, but then now they can opt into real, outside of the banks. They can easily go between the two for different purposes, you know? And like, whereas with our traditional system, they just don't have that. Where you're going to hold a bunch of cash underneath your bed, like that's how you opt out of this current system. Or go buy physical gold and silver. Yeah, and I feel like crypto also kind of replaces real estate as an investment in some ways. It's kind of like especially like Bitcoin. You're buying space on a blockchain. There's only 21 million plots, you know,
mm,
and you can subdivide the plots as much as you want. But there's only 21 million that there'll ever be there, and we're discovering a little bit more land every year, you know. Uh, but it's scarce, and it's kind of like buying land, except it's all fungible instead of, you know, well, this one has a house on it, this one has lots of trees, you know. They're all, and all the land pieces are now NFTs, right? But
mm,
Bitcoin is all fungible, and it's really interesting because there's only so much land, right? So if you own more land, it's like you're owning more of the earth blockchain, you know?
mm-hmm,
And Bitcoin is kind of the same thing. It's like, okay, this is this value, but it's better. It's kind of like land in that it's volatile. The price goes up and down. It's but there's only so much of it. The difference between Bitcoin and land is that there's lots of planets.
mm.
You know, there's lots and lots of planets. And so,
Uh-huh.
will everyone want to be on the Bitcoin planet? Hmm, everyone wants to be on planet Earth. That's for sure. You know, so in many ways, land is much better than Bitcoin because, but Bitcoin has this network where almost anyone in the world can buy Bitcoin. Ether almost has the same network. It's getting close to be as widespread as Bitcoin, but it's not there yet.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's still behind. It's still a lot easier to get Bitcoin and trade Bitcoin.
Of course, there's this big fight always between Bitcoin and Ether and maximalism and blah blah. But at the end, like these, all these things are brands that have like certain characteristics, right?
Yeah.
It's not about like a fight. It's just like branding,
Yeah.
which is really interesting.
Yeah, it's very much about the brand. It's about the brand and the network, right? Like, you know, US Tether is on a lot of blockchains. It's almost every EVM blockchain. You know, no one's like, hey, give me Tether on Gnosis chain. No one's saying that. No one is saying, give me Tether on Gnosis chain. No one has ever said those words. um, so, but Tron, for some reason, seems to have a good network. They probably have a nice wallet that makes it really easy to see your tether. You see it right away. You know, Ethereum, it takes 15 seconds for a block to go through. And in reality, that means when I hit send, it takes about a minute. Of
Mhm.
course, that's amazing if you compare it to Western Union or some shit. But Tron, 5 seconds, 10 seconds max, I'm sure. And it's very easy to connect to you know, Binance and other maybe like no KYC blockchains or
Mm,
exchanges, like no KYC exchanges, and it's not volatile. Like, this is the real thing. Like, as far as currency, I just don't like the whole theory, the whole like idea of Bitcoin Cash is just dumb to me. It's just dumb. That's totally doesn't make any sense. Using It's like using Amazon stock as currency. It
mhm,
just doesn't work, you know. It's too volatile. It doesn't provide as much value as a stable coin does. Even if it's in the US dollar, it's like it's a worse store of value, but it's a way better medium of exchange and a way better unit of account. And that's just easier, you know. It's like If someone wants to send me money, I don't want. I mean, I am an investor in Bitcoin or Ether, so I will take it. But
Right.
God, it creates weird problems. It's beyond just like practical application. Like our monkey minds can't handle it. Like it doesn't work for humans. It needs to be low volatility.
Yeah. I struggle with that all the time. I still just like change my crypto into like stable coins because like I can't handle volatility. It's like, oh no,
Exactly.
I'm a Mexican woman that needs to pay my rent, like,
Yeah.
and buy food, and like, no, I can't handle that. It's too
It's
much.
not worth the risk. See you Monday. Bye, Almond.
Bye.